Welcome to the Rob Liefeld Show featuring Robservations. I bring over 40 years experience in comic books and entertainment across 5 decades. I offer insights and opinions on the business and the art of comic books and pop culture. If it's happening in games, in movies, in streaming, or comic books, we're covering it right here on the Robservations Show. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Rob Liefeld Show featuring Robservations. This is our show that we talk about comics and how comic books and comic book superheroes and these characters have impacted all of pop culture. I take you back often to my own experiences, 7 years old, finding the bug, catching the bug, getting the fever for all things comic books, and it carried with me my entire life until I was 18 years old. My entire 18-year-old existence was leading up to me becoming a professional comic book artist. I've been doing this now for 40 years. I love sharing my insights, the adventures, my perspective on this incredible art form. It's an American art form. It is a proud, incredible art form that has produced some just mind-blowing adventures and some seminal generational talents. And we're going to touch on many of those generational talents as we discuss our topic today. You might have heard of Deadpool or Cable or X-Force or Domino or Shatterstar or Image Comics, Youngblood, Prophet, Evangeline, Brigade, Bloodstrike, Bloodwolf, lots of blood. These are my contributions to the comic book industry. I have been at the game, in the game, and staying in the game for the last 40 years. All of my recent Deadpool work that I did for Marvel over the last 10 years, coming back, Deadpool Team Up, Deadpool Bad Blood, Deadpool Badder Blood, the 30th anniversary, all that stuff has been collected just in the last few months in really nice hardcover, softcover trade editions that you can grab. Right now, I'm doing Youngblood. We have reissued the original Youngblood launch, the launch that started and kicked off Image Comics, selling over 1 million comics in 1992, really defying all the odds and all the expectations. And I have a brand new Youngblood comic that has been available direct to consumer from me for the last 2 months. And we're going to go worldwide and mass market with that later this fall of 2025. So the work keeps coming. I have a side hustle, a series I call Last Blood that you can only get from me direct to consumer. I do them on I share them on my live streams. I've done manga versions. I've done 3 total issues so far. It takes place in the future with my catalog of characters, the Extreme Universe, Bloodstrike, Brigade, Prophet, Dooms 4. If you haven't seen them in a long time, they're in it. So I am making comics each and every day. Before I jumped on this mic today, I was drawing a page, laying out four more pages, going on a trip. Like to take work with me when I go. And so when I was finally finished and scanned and sent today's bounty off, I pulled myself up here to do today's show. Very excited to talk about this topic. All our topics are based in history. They're based in facts. It's what I watched. It's what I read. It's what I consumed from interviews, from interpersonal relationships, from getting to know every single person on the chain who created this work today, the Secret Wars. I hung out with extensively. As a teenager and then as a young professional, I had lunches, dinners, went to parties, slept at their homes. So this is a body of work that I am extremely well informed on. And the reason that we are focusing back on Secret Wars again, because Secret Wars has a really rich history. I've covered it a number of times on my Robservations podcast. And for many of you who are new to the show via YouTube, and man, I'm just so thankful you're here because you have been very overt in expressing the enthusiasm that you have, that the fact that this show has found YouTube. I'm looking into the camera. I'm talking to you guys. I'm sharing with you in a way that I didn't used to. Like I said, you got to shower. You got to put on clothes to do a show like this. It's that you got to understand that's something that has recently been lost. So I'm going to lament it from time to time. It is something that I loved, that I could just roll out of whatever situation I was doing, sometimes 5 a.m. in the morning, sometimes midnight, go into my studio, go into another room, click the mic, and go. Now it's camera. We got to at least shower, right? We've got to at least shower, and we are, and we're so happy that you're here as we discuss this. We're going to try and utilize a greater aspect of the visual component as best we can. I'm sorry this is a low rent show. I know many of you I'm not going to say many, few of you have suggested all manner of ways that I can enhance and improve the show. And I'm not going to rule that out for another time, but we haven't even been doing this for 5 weeks. So just give me a little time, and I promise you over time, along with my great production team, Reed Mounts, who cleans everything up and puts it all together when I'm done with the initial recordings, we're going to do our best to implement as many tricks as we can. But right now, just hold on tight. This is what we're doing. And I have covered Secret Wars in many of these podcasts. And we're going to go over some of that detail today. But the fact that the Secret Wars comics, and I believe the upcoming Secret Wars movie, you're like, what are you talking about? They just delayed like Doomsday, or as I call it, Avengers Doomsicle chairs. Because come on, they made us wait for the chairs. And next up, please, drum roll, is this guy and this guy and this girl and that. They have Doomsicle chairs, Doomsday, with a multitude of people in what is a giant crossover event, which will then lead into Secret Wars. And the Russo brothers were on record since Infinity War and Endgame talking about that's what they wanted to do the most. They wanted to do Secret Wars, except I'm not sure that it's the Secret Wars that I love. I know they did a follow-up to Secret Wars. Was it 2015? Was it 2016? And it was a really good story. It's one of the stronger stories that I experienced and that I read from Jonathan Hickman, and that was very compelling. It had Doom, and because of the focus on Doom, I've got to believe that's the one they're telling. And I'm going to tell you, I'll tell you why I think it's a slight misstep. I hope they do incorporate some of the strengths of the original, because the original is celebrated, it is beloved, it is heralded, it is a seminal event in comic books, and changed the course of comic book. It introduced the blockbuster crossover. And so much of this is the byproduct of the sheer genius. So we do throw that word around maybe a little too much in our society today. But I'm going to tell you, if there is a genius in comics, and there was one during this period, it is Mr. Jim Shooter. Jim Shooter defined so much of my early passion for comic books. When I first was starting, 7, 8 years old, he was in 72, 73, 74. He was writing Legion of Superheroes. Did you know that he got that job 14 years old? It may be earlier, 13, but he was writing stories and sending them into DC, and they hired him. They hired him via mail. You can go on and you can do an even deeper, more comprehensive look into Jim Shooter's the start of his career and how he started. It's like a boy genius, a boy wonder. Eventually, when he made his way to Marvel, he did learn at the hand of both Stan Lee and somewhat Roy Thomas. And I don't think the baton sharing from Roy to Jim was as clean as anybody wanted it to be. But once Jim was in control, Marvel was transformed. During his tenure, he made way more of the right calls than the missed calls, and we all benefited from it. The Bronze Age is what it is, and right here, this is a byproduct. If I were to list all the things that I thought that Jim Shooter did that benefited Marvel and benefited us as fandom, as teenagers, as people who just hung on all of the positives and all of the great moves that he engaged in, at the top of the list was the unlocking of so many talents. And it is, I believe, without equal, the amount of talent that he unlocked and inspired. Because I'm of what we want to call it the 90s generation. We were influenced by everything that he did. Those guys that he unlocked inspired us. Now you're going, well, what about Stan? Well, Stan had a bunch of good guys. Obviously, Jack Kirby was the best to ever do it. But Jack didn't feel like he was being utilized properly, and he went to DC Comics. and he worked there for 5 to 6 years before coming back to Marvel. And then everything that he ever wanted in regards to how he wanted to have his stories presented, like just doing his own thing, whether it was writing and drawing Black Panther, Captain America, the Eternals, Machine Man, Devil, Dinosaur. Jack did it, but he had to leave. They wanted to pair him and still have him basically create stories for Stan that Stan would script, and Jack had a greater vision for what he wanted to do. Wally Wood, Steve Ditko, Jack, they all had these giant fallings out, and they went on to officially become writer artists under different umbrellas, under different publishing houses. With Jim Shooter, and perhaps he saw some of the sins of the father, and he decided, I'm going to let these guys go. I'm going to activate. I'm going to let Frank Miller right here behind me, this Daredevil run. I'm going to let Frank Miller, I'm going to unlock him. He's doing great work with this really talented writer named Roger McKenzie. But you know what? Frank has a passion. He's 22 years old. I'm going to let him, I'm just going to see what he can do. What do I have to lose? Daredevil is a bi-monthly comic at this point in 1979. It ships 6 times a year. It's not at the top of the charts. They're basically keeping it hanging around. Frank Miller comes on. It becomes the talk of the town. It is the generic, not the generic, it is the go-to topic at every comic store that I wander in during that time. If you had a friend who was into comics, you're talking about Daredevil. Can you believe what's happening on Daredevil? Elektra, I shared with you guys recently how the death of Elektra shocked me. Like literally, I will never not remember how it felt to sit there and be like, wait a second, she's gone. They've just taken the most popular character at Marvel, the most popular character by far in the Daredevil comics. And when I tell you that Elektra was as popular as Wolverine at that time, just take my word for it. You'll find anybody else in my age group at that time who will completely come alongside and they will confirm that. Daredevil started out selling the X-Men. Why is that? Because the popularity of the characters in the book, and so much of it was fueled by this romance and this intrigue with this Elektra character. That is all Frank Miller. He comes in, he starts writing, he starts drawing. The book just explodes in sales. George Perez on record in interviews, Titans would have been the number one book in the entire industry were it not for Frank Miller and Daredevil. Because 1980 Titans launches, 1980 is when Frank Miller takes over Daredevil and then never looks back. And it runs for the entirety of through 83. Frank is on Daredevil. That's George and Marv doing their thing over with DC at the Titans. What if he doesn't unlock Frank Miller? What if he says, no, you've got to work with Roger McKenzie? This is what I see. That there is a scenario that this happens. We've all encountered people who want to push their vision on us, and you as an artist have to stand up and go, no. These are my terms. And if this isn't met, I'm not hanging around. I'm doing something else. My talents will be best served in this other capacity. Assume that Frank Miller stood his ground and he got Daredevil, and we got the greatest Daredevil run in the history of Daredevil. This run has not been surpassed. It certainly hadn't achieved these heights before. It has never achieved those heights since. All of the Daredevils that you continue to see are based on the blueprint that Frank put forth. The heightened awareness and the heightened profile and presence of Kingpin, the Hand, all of these things I've covered numerous times. And I love talking about them. That's why I can cover them effortlessly. John Byrne and Chris Claremont were having a giant divorce. They were having their War of the Roses. They both felt that they were the most important part of the X-Men that had blown up and become, again, the talk of the town. Before Frank Miller's Daredevil, it was Byrne and John Byrne and Chris Claremont and Terry Austin on the X-Men. Again, to ask anybody who was there and look at those stories and tell me how it wasn't. The Magneto, the Volcano, the Savage Land, going to Japan, Moses Magnum, Canada, Alpha Flight, the Hellfire Club, Proteus, Dark Phoenix. I mean, the most legendary run that series has ever seen, and it built the X-Men that we know today. That was all started in 77, 78, 79, 80. Byrne is frustrated. He believes that more of his stories are being used. Chris is like, I'm not giving this up. I have been the voice of this book. In the Bible, one of the most famous stories of wisdom is when Solomon, whether you believe it or not, it's a great story. The two women say, this is my baby. That woman says, that's my baby. I love it. I want it. That's my baby. I love it. I'm paraphrasing. And Solomon's like, I don't know which one of these women is telling me the difference, but you know what? Here's the deal. Okay, ladies, we're going to cut the baby in half. Each of you will take a half. I mean, obviously, very severe. And the one cried out and said, "No, give it to her. Don't harm that baby." And Solomon knew, you're the mom. This is the mom. We had a King Solomon, and two mommies situation with Byrne and Claremont. Jim Shooter says, how about I give you Fantastic Four? How about I unlock that for you? And John, I know you had a tenure on that previously where you were an artist with Marv Wolfman and you introduced Terrax and Frankie. No, not Frankie Ray. That's George Perez. But they made Frankie Ray the Herald during that period. He said, why don't you come back? Why don't you write it? Why don't you just take over? And John Byrne not only takes Fantastic Four to the most exciting period that it has ever had again before or since. And here's what happens in the comics. But what about this? I'm not interested in those. I've read those. I read Mark Waid and Michael Ringo. It's good. It's not Byrne. I read a handful of the Hickman stuff. It's okay. It's nowhere near John Byrne. Again, why are those pages going for so much money? What? Because of the memories, the history. When I say pages, I say the original art. The pages, the history, the impact, the resonance. They're reprinted, they're collected, they're giant size, they're in slipcase hardcovers, they're in incredible foreign editions. The work carries because the work was so great. And not only that, he then says, John, I know you introduced Alpha Flight in the X-Men when you were there with Chris. Why don't you do Alpha Flight? Why don't you give us our first Canadian super team? And it's going to sell 500,000 copies. John Byrne had the #1 book and the highest selling book that Marvel had up to that time. Up until Secret Wars, which is what we're going to talk about today. But we're not done. Another generational talent that he unlocked. Walt Simonson, I had followed over at DC Comics. He did Dr. Fate. He did some Metalman stories. He famously took over one of their lower selling books and immediately had tremendous impact, but it wasn't enough to sell it because it was already so far in the ground. I did an entire podcast on Hercules Unchained in the podcast division before we were here on YouTube. I was aware and a huge fan of everything Walt Simonson did, and then he became like this licensing guru. He did the Close Encounters of the Third Kind movie adaptation. He did the Alien, Ridley Scott's original Alien. He did that movie adaptation, I believe, for Heavy Metal. It's brilliant. He penciled and inked it. It's great. Recently, they did a massive, giant reprint of it. It's fantastic. Close Encounters of the Third Time. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Alien. Then Star Wars. And right before that, he finished up the run about a year's worth, 10 or 12 issues. That's hundreds of pages of Battlestar Galactica. Battlestar Galactica, Alien, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Star Wars. This guy is the sci-fi guru. And suddenly he emerges on Thor and does a run that is as spectacular and as impactful as what I'm saying about Daredevil, as what I've told you about John Byrne's Fantastic Four, his X-Men. His Thor run, at the end of his first issue, I didn't know I'm like, what's going on here? You've got to read it. You've got to seek it out. It introduces Beta Ray Bill, but the outcome was one that was just a mic drop for the ages and catapulted us. That book suddenly couldn't be in my hands fast enough, and I wasn't buying Thor, and honestly, a lot of people weren't buying Thor, but suddenly they were buying Thor because of what Walt Simonson was bringing to the table. Another generational talent, unlocked, paired with an incredible property. Thor had been a revolving door of fill-in artists and maybe 3 or 4 runs by different teams, and it was nowhere near the glory days when I was really excited about Thor. The last time was probably 1978, 1979, when I was 10, 11, 12. Now I'm 15 years old. What the hell? What is going on? Thor is now the most exciting book at Marvel. And Walt gives us a big, long, drawn-out, amazing omnibus worth of issues. All unlocked. All of them. And I'll throw Bob Layton into that group. Bob Layton was doing co-plotting on Iron Man and doing the finished inks on John Romita Jr., on an Iron Man run, The Demon in the Bottle, the stuff that really made Iron Man a fan favorite in the late 70s, early 80s. And then he came to Jim Shooter and said, hey, what if I did Hercules, but with a kind of a humorous take? and take him out of the superhero realm, get him off Earth where he hangs out with the Avengers and the Champions and the Defenders and everybody else, get him off planet, traveling around the galaxy, this renowned Greek god. And I'm going to throw a little humor in there and a little fourth wall breaks. And it was hilarious, and it was beautifully drawn. You could tell Bob rose to the occasion, having been given this opportunity. He was going to land this plane, and he did. So generational talents. Jim Shooter also instituted, because he saw the forest for the trees. He saw that Eclipse Comics and First Comics and Dark Horse Comics, he saw what they were bringing to the table. He saw what was going on with Fantagraphics. He saw the agents that were getting into the field and representing a very impressive array of talents. And he realized we need to give these people a percentage of sales. And he instituted in 1981, I believe. If it was 82, then I'm a year off. He instituted the royalty program with which you got a percentage of sales, and something that I took great advantage of, which was the character participation program, where if you created a character and you signed those contracts, you got that percentage of that character. Jim Shooter transformed my own life. But even if he had never done that, the moves that he made in unlocking talent, and then the stuff that we're going to discuss, and we're going to get more in detail, Secret Wars, taking what was a pissing match between two toy companies, because the boys' action figure market had become such a robust moneymaker. Whether it was G.I. Joe, whether it was Master of the Universe, whether it was the Star Wars line of toys. Did you know that the reason Wars is in Secret Wars is because it tested so high? Because Wars, next to anything, especially on the back of everything that had happened with Star Wars, was a giant just buy-in to young boys. And that testing stuff, I've mentioned it before, but I'm going to tell you right now. Mattel had reached out to me in the first year of Youngblood, when Youngblood was 1, 2, 3, and 4 were coming out in 1992. And they invited me to their offices in Los Angeles to go. And I'm telling you, it was the first time, and now this is going to be going back a little ways, but I'm older. There was a show called Get Smart. And at the beginning, the star of Get Smart, he would walk into these doors, and they'd open and open and open, and he kept going by these steel doors, and at the end, the gag is it smashes on his nose. But the whole opening credits of the show was like this humorous, like how many levels he had to pass of steel doors opening and closing to get him to his secret agent level. When I was at Mattel, I'm like, oh my gosh, did they get this from Get Smart? Giant doors, giant prohibitive, keep out, open, further down the tunnel, open. Finally, you go into this giant, spectacular, I mean, like it was an airport hangar, giant elevated ceilings and workstations, and toys were being made right in front of you. And I have talked about this in the past, but to entice me, it was funny, my attorney said, put those down. They want you to play with them. He was like, put those toys down. They had a Prophet action figure and a Shaft action figure. And later, on our second meeting, they would add a Chapel action figure. I got to hold a Chapel, a Shaft, and a Prophet. They had sculpted them and presented them to me. And at that point, I wasn't someone negotiating on any level. I was like, where's the sandbox? I'm 24 years old. Can I go play with Prophet, Shaft, and later Chapel? Okay. They were keen, based on just the comic book sales, of getting into this business of action figures based on comic books. And once again, they laid out how the boys' action figure market had been a giant piece of the pie, and they wanted as much as they could possibly have. And the Hasbro and Kenner branches were making more. Now Mattel would kind of gesture over to the giant 70% of this giant hangar and workplace that was pink, that represented Barbie, and the other part that represented Hot Wheels. I'm like, look, we do well. We do well. But we really want to get into this. So we had some discussions with them, and at one point they walked me over to the play area, where it's a giant room, all glass, in a circle, and there were kids in there playing with toys. Not the Youngblood toys, but they were playing with action figures and vehicles and play sets. And there were adults in there, and they were observing them. And based on the data and the way they interacted with the toys and the toy play, they would come back with reports. Well, guess what? Upon my second visit with Mattel, as we're discussing this, they told me that the Youngblood action figures that they made, the pre-made action figures, and I think there was probably multiples of them that I never saw, had gone over very well with the study group that they had chosen, of the kids that they had chosen. And I'm like, oh, wow, I wish I would have been here to see that, because having seen it the day that I was there and watching the kids, and I mean, these are kids on the ground, sitting on the floor in the carpeted room, but it was like a giant bubble, a fishbowl that you could look inside and watch them. And of course, you couldn't hear anything. But on the inside, the observers were taking notes and kind of accumulating the data. Well, in the second visit, they said, Rob, that the toys were received very well. But as you obviously know, given Youngblood is at this point limited to just a comic book, it has no name value. The Youngblood name has no value, and we're going to have to change that. That means we're going to have to buy X amount of commercials. And they would talk to me about, what are your prospects about getting into animation, movie adaptations? What can we, learn from you that would make us feel better about our investment in this? So at that point, I just shrugged and just make the best toys you possibly can, and I'll worry about that. But they were very clear that Youngblood had no name value to these children. So why am I telling you this? Wars was the highest tested toy tie-in name that Mattel had informed Jim Shooter of when they came on board to do the Secret Wars crossover that would align with the release of the Mattel toy line of Marvel characters. And Marvel hadn't had a kick-ass toy line at all in my entire lifetime. They had the Mego dolls in the late 70s, but they hadn't really blown up or gotten into the action figure market that had been owned by G.I. Joe, Star Wars, Master of the Universe. So Secret Wars is the name they settled on because it tested great, and it had an association with Star Wars, and anything with wars was testing through the roof. So they adopted that. They added the secret in front of it, and they were off to the races. And what was it? It was a way to tie in a storyline with a toy line that was going to have a few Avengers, Spider-Man, a few X-Men, okay? Hulk. I mean, it was going to have this representation of toys and a variety of villains. Kang, Doc Ock, Doctor Doom. So Secret Wars, just by reason of existing, is a giant crossover event, the kind of which Marvel had not done to this extent. We'd seen Avengers, Defenders, and let me stop right here and tell you, because this was brought up to me this week, and I went into Arizona, Scottsdale, had a great, fantastic, amazing signing. Bill Ponsetti, thank you for opening your doors to me. Thank you for just being so generous. Thank you to each and every one of the hundreds and hundreds of people who showed up. At one point, Bill blurted out, "This is the most people we've ever had in the store. Like, free comic book day or no, the biggest signing." And you guys, I always fly in blind. I don't know exactly what I'm going to encounter, but the love and the passion and just the fun that was coming off everybody. But one guy among many, because you guys are such amazing listeners and such an audience that I could not be more thankful for. One guy's like, "Hey, Rob, I just listened to your Avengers Defenders episode from a couple years back, and man, I was really into that. And I remember that was a big deal for me." And so we had this discussion about the Avengers Defenders. And it was Dormammu and Loki or the villains, and that excited me at the time because you got, you doubled up on your villains. And, when my wife was asking me about Deadpool and Batman last week, and I was telling her about the very first Superman, Spider-Man, the very first DC and Marvel superhero team up, which featured Superman and Spider-Man and Doc Ock and Lex Luthor, was, really beloved, a great hit. When it hit the liquor store in 1976, I could not have grabbed it faster. They did a follow-up in 1980, and now they doubled up because you got to have more, right? So now it's Superman and Spider-Man, and it's Doctor Doom and the Parasite. Never thought the Parasite was the best choice. Jim Shooter wrote it. but Wonder Woman and Hulk are there in a guest star role. They both have they are there enough pages to be something more than a cameo. Seeing Superman and Hulk punch each other was exciting. It was something that I had really anticipated my entire life. Like, wow, these signature characters from both companies are trading blows. Very exciting. Well, Contest of Champions, I believe, was the big crossover that they had salvaged from their Olympic event, and it involved everybody, seemingly everybody in the Marvel universe in these face-offs. It was kind of a precursor to what we were going to get from the Secret Wars, and it was something they had to scramble once the 1980 Winter Olympics were canceled due to the international incidents, Russia, everything that was going on. You can go back and you can look it up. Well, they salvaged it by kind of shifting gears, shifting tone, shifting focus, and they put it out a little later called Contest of Champions. And I think it's Bill Mantlo, it's John Romita Jr., it's Pablo Marcos on inks and finishes, but it grabs it. Everyone is battling on behalf of these celestial beings and the Grandmaster, and they're split up into teams, 3 against 3, 4, all different teams, and a lot of the different international characters that Marvel had, because it was reflecting the Olympic intent with Shamrock from Ireland, okay, and different characters like that. They had their Russian characters, Dark Star. So everybody was represented, and everyone was having these basically Hunger Games type battles. Well, this really was setting the groundwork for what would happen with Secret Wars, which is now 12 issues, not 3, and was very concentrated on this Fantastic Four, Avengers, X-Men, Spider-Man unity. That they were the core. And it was this event that was acknowledged in that they all disappeared for a brief period of time, and they were gone for a year in this Secret Wars setting, but when they got back, it was in a blink, and they didn't miss a year. And then they actually continued it because a character like the Thing, who had his own comic at the time, he decided, I want to hang on. I don't want to go back. I want to stay in this dimension with these characters and continue in these adventures. So there were all manners of possibilities that were open as a result of this. But the most powerful aspect of it and the application of it is we're going to do this giant, never before seen or experienced Marvel crossover on this level. We're going to have Doctor Doom. We're going to have Galactus is in this. We're going to have Magneto, Spider-Man villains. And so for us, the fans, it was really exciting. They grabbed Mike Zeck, who we had been a giant fan of in the late 70s, early 80s, up from his Shang-Chi Master of Kung Fu comics to then his great Captain America run under Jim Shooter. I feel like Mike Zeck was developed and became more of a significant talent, and certainly one that was grabbing all of our notices while he was doing Captain America, following up post his Master of Kung Fu work. He tapped into Mike Zeck, John Beatty, the team that was giving us Captain America. I mean, we got incredible covers. That cover to Secret Wars #1 is still one of the most iconic images in the entire history of comic books. The people who were there, they know it, they see it, they remember it, wow, the feeling, the excitement. And as people like Alex Ross have recreated it, and it's been recreated numerous times, it has become even more cemented as this incredibly important image, which represents a movement, which is this crossover. So what is Marvel Films about to do? And I can be as kind about it as possible, but remember, don't shoot the messenger. I don't write this stuff. And right this morning, before I was starting my workday and catching up on work, one of the big newsletters that I subscribe to, the Ankler, and I have a lot of Substack and a lot of subscription services. Some of these really talented journalists have obviously, in the world of sports, politics, entertainment, have all struck out on their own. I like the great writing, the great details, the inside sourcing. So I follow so many of them. I don't follow any like people who aren't vetted. A lot of these people have great information. They have great history, great relations, and a great track record. They were listing some of the things that they believe were endangered, what is, they had three categories: the stuff that's dead, the stuff that's endangered, and the stuff that's blowing up. And on the endangered list was superhero films. And they cited, and everyone says take Deadpool and Wolverine out of it. And I think that's right for them to do, because it wasn't in the original planning. It wasn't part of the original phase. It was something that was activated in order to have something that did extremely well with fans, because of the poor reaction to Eternals and Ant-Man 3, and the tepid reaction to Thor 4, and now the outright break-even status on Cap and Thunderbolts. They are now called endangered by the entertainment industry. Are superhero films going to still have their place in the pantheon of filmmaking, because it says they can't seem to rise above this 380, 400 million number, when Marvel used to be in the 800 million to the billion range? Well, what got them to the billion range was the Infinity Wars, the Endgames, the Deadpool Wolverines, the Spider-Man No Way Homes. Multiple guest stars, lots of, team ups. Team up. We are in the age of the team up now. And, it's time passes, things change. Maybe the four most important words I ever heard. Time passes, things change. So, Doomsicle chairs, and then Secret Wars, we've already seen it. They're going to have X-Men characters. They're going to have Avengers characters. They're going to have Fantastic Four characters. They're going to have Thunderbolts characters who are now Avengers. We don't know what other surprises are in store, but we have just been promised the biggest of all crossovers. And they look at the data, and they look at the results, and they look at how people were excited by No Way Home, by Endgame, by Deadpool Wolverine, with its generous servings of guest stars: Elektra, Blade, Gambit, Human Torch, all along for the ride. Multiple Deadpools. The entire Deadpool Corps shows up. Wolverine variants. That's the menu now. What Secret Wars ushered in, what it introduced, and what it capitalized on was all of these Marvel properties in this long-form story, this 12-issue with a double-sized finale. So it was almost like 13 issues in terms of page size that we received, that represented all of these characters jamming together for the first time. Now, maybe you're like, Rob, I've seen 10 of these. Yeah, but we hadn't. This isn't House of M followed by Civil War, followed by World War Hulk, followed by, Siege, whatever. X-Men versus Avengers. This was it. This was the first time we had been teased. We had been teased with Avengers, Defenders, Wars, and maybe some team ups, but nothing on the scale of Secret Wars. And I believe now that's what's happening in the film frame, is they're going to try their very best to duplicate the same success that the comic books had, because now that's what they believe the audience demands. And it is terribly disappointing to me that we're never going to get an Avengers Count Nefaria film. We're never going to get a long form, it feels like, Avengers Korvac film. Some of the great stories. It looks like Bride of Ultron, the Jocasta stuff, is going to be in the Vision series. But my son, my 23-year-old son, on the last day that he was 22, was like, "Hey, Dad, they introduced Ultron in Marvel Rivals," and we've talked about Marvel Rivals on the podcast before we went to YouTube, and what a huge success it was. And the only downside was that Marvel was not there to capitalize on the immediate just impact when it arrived late 2023 and then late 2024, and then exploded from January on, and became just the hottest video game and one of the biggest, most influential comic book themed anything was this game. And suddenly my son's back into video games, and his 20-something buddies are all, they're engaged, they're on there. And I'm going to tell you, my son Chase has a killer setup. He is not like his dad. He is technically proficient, and God bless him. He always goes, "Hey, Dad, could I help you? Could I help you?" He's the reason I talk into this mic and his podcast was launched in the first place. He has got this sweet, he's got multiple monitors. Oh, it's killer. It's just a killer, the way that he interacts and plays video games. So it's really incredibly visual and quite stunning. But he was completely back on board. At the same time that my sons friends who are 14 years old and my nephews were dabbling in this, the video games, it was reaching them. Well, Ultron in Marvel Rivals is making some noise. And suddenly that sparked, because I wanted to tell Chase about my favorite encounter with Ultron was written by none other than Mr. Jim Shooter. Now, see, I've got my True Believers. Okay, my actual. I have like 6 copies of this. Okay, this is my favorite single Avengers issue. It is my favorite. This and the issue that preceded it are my favorite single. It's my single favorite Avengers story. And I started talking to my son about it and how before Wolverine had claws, Ultron was the adamantium menace in the Marvel Universe. In the very early, the very first page of his very first appearance, it is discussed about, the adamantium, how dangerous the adamantium is. And this alloy, this metal that Cap's shield couldn't dent, that Thor's hammer bounced off of, that Iron Man's repulsor rays. I mean, he is this devastating threat. And whenever he shows up, he takes a number of the Avengers down with him. And in the aftermath of the issue before this, when he ambushes the Avengers, we see an outing with Ant-Man. Again, Jim Shooter opens the book with a crazed Hank Pym in his Ant-Man persona, taking down the Avengers in a way that you just, like, he's crawling into their ears. He's going in their noses. He's battling. He's got all his flying ants that are crawling all over Scarlet Witch so that she's screaming and freaking out and she can't focus enough to utilize her powers and take them out. He's getting under the characters and growing really fast and knocking them down and then retreating and being microscopic again and running away. Just amazing, an amazing takedown. They eventually do secure him, subdue him, but it's all a precursor to this giant ambush. And the opening of this 1977 Avengers issue, Thor is landing amidst the Avengers being loaded into the ambulance. They have, you got Captain America, you got Beast, you got Scarlet Witch. There they are, right there, all being loaded into the ambulance. They're clinging to life. Iron Man, Black Panther, Wonder Man, and Thor are the final 4 that are going to be engaged against Ultron. And here Thor walks in, and this is the entire roster. Wonder Man, who's got like strength like Superman, and invincibility. He's pretty damn indestructible. And then Black Panther, who is nowhere near the Chadwick Boseman powered level Black Panther. And then there's Iron Man kind of powering up his armor because he's been terribly damaged by the encounter of the issue before with Ultron. And Black Panther is very much talking about his humanity and how he really doesn't know what he can do in this battle. And if they're going to take on Ultron, his contributions are going to be limited. And by the same token, Wonder Man is completely doubting. He does not want any piece of Ultron. He's scared. He's been brought back to life a few issues earlier. He's been dead in the Marvel Universe for over a decade. He's been brought back. And he became our audience surrogate while Jim Shooter wrote this book. Whether he was falling in love with a married woman in Scarlet Witch, Wanda, or he was fearful of dying again, and it constantly would petrify him, would paralyze him, to the great friendship that he struck up with Hank McCoy, a.k.a. the Beast, and their relationship would go on and dominate and define the Avengers comics during this period. This is all set up here. Thor is like, verily, Ultron is terrifying, but we can do this. We've got enough here. And Black Panther can stealth his way into the base. I mean, they're trying to utilize, what they're going to each bring to the table. But when they take off to encounter and confront Ultron, it is this word balloon right here. When and this is beautifully illustrated by George Perez and Pablos Marcos, and they did incredible work over just a year's worth of Jim Shooter stories. I mean, they were one of the greatest teams that this book has ever seen. Thor is yelling, "Death to Ultron." Avengers assemble, "Death to Ultron." Verily, I love verily. This night we shall avenge our slain comrades or taste death's bitter cup ourselves. And when you're a kid and you're reading that and you're like, holy shit, Thor's prepared to die. Like, and this is your favorite comic and these are your favorite characters. You're like, oh, John Byrne is just about to come on X-Men. So I can get away with telling you that the Avengers during this time was my favorite. And there's Simon Williams, there's Wonder Man, his word balloons go as follows. I never even considered the possibility of dying. But he's serious. And I know it. Thor is prepared to die tonight. He expects it. Unless we win against a foe that he has already told me is invincible. A foe who has already killed 4 Avengers. Because they believe the Avengers that are going to the hospital, they've been told they're clinging to life. So this is just this is my favorite Avengers comic of all space and time. There's a reason it became a true believer. This was, I think, released around the time of, obviously, I think this is Avengers 161 and a reprinting of it. But this is around, I believe, the age of, when they're releasing Age of Ultron, and they're putting all the great Ultron stuff together. I have this in every possible. I have the originals in Mylar. I have the hardcovers, the soft covers, every possible reprint of this I own. I know that I'm one of 5 guys, because we've all told each other, who would bid this cover up to probably 7 figures. Everybody wants it, and everybody is going to try and get it. It is, to my knowledge, not come to market in the last 10 years. But if it is loosed, it will cause a frenzy. The cover, the issue before this went for $360. It went for a giant amount 2 years back. This is guaranteed over $500,000. Guaranteed. I don't know how. I believe it'll kiss a mill. It's that important to people. It's seen of one of the top, as one of the top 5 Avengers comics, and literally the best Ultron story. And for me, it's my favorite Avengers comic ever. Look at the talent: Jim Shooter, George Perez, Pablos Marcos. Incredible. I'm not going to tell you how it ends. You should check it out. The showdown with Ultron. When I grabbed this as a kid, I didn't put it down for weeks and weeks, and I drew panels from it. I was consumed with it. The characterization, that audience surrogate that we had in Wonder Man, it really, really, resonated. The reason I'm dwelling on this is we're not slowing down to do just isolated Avenger stories anymore. It's got to be Secret Wars, Doomsicle chairs. It's got to be get everybody together, because we want to see Channing Tatum standing next to Chris Hemsworth, standing next to Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom, standing next to, is it going to be Brie Larson? Is it going to be, Shang-Chi? I mean, whatever it is, it's the mashup. These are now the big things. This is the same kind of thing that contributed to Secret Wars. And on top of it, yes, Secret Wars. And in order to sell two. Do you want to know why the black costume exists? Mattel said we need 2 Spider-Man toys. If we're doing this, we're investing our money, and we're going to go up against Kenner at the same time, and they're bringing superpowers to bear. They're doing their own DC crossovers, and they're going to do their own toy line at the same time we're doing one. We need 2 Spider-Mans. So we have set the table. We are going to discuss so much more of this in part 2. We have a part 2 of Secret Wars that's going to be coming up. I'm going to record it. I'm going to bank it, and we're going to continue to delve into what happens with Marvel's Secret Wars, the comic, the toys, the legacy, and what it really predicts for what's to come, because this is now the blueprint. Secret Wars is now the blueprint for what's going. It's the new end game, if you will. It's the new goal that they're trying to reach to get us there. Now, before we go, I will say that I believe Secret Wars, the original concept of the original 12-issue mega blockbuster series, went on to become, at that time, the biggest selling Marvel comic. The most excitement. People, it's why they immediately had to do a Secret Wars 2, because it had made retailers so much money. It had made Marvel so much money. When I tell you that I bunked at Mike Zeck's house. I hung out with him and John Beatty. Mike Zeck lived near Jerry Ordway in Cincinnati. In Connecticut. And we all went and saw the opening weekend of Running Man, Arnold Schwarzenegger's sci-fi based on the Stephen King book, which is now obviously being remade with Edgar Wright and Glenn Powell, Josh Brolin. It's going to be great. But that was the 2-week period that I was in New York and the places that I was hitting. And I had met Mike Zeck. I have a giant Captain America. I commissioned him to do a Captain America. I commissioned him to do a Punisher in my book, my sketchbooks. I was a giant fan. And he would tell me Jim Shooter wanted me to pull my camera back. And he wanted as many characters in each panel because he felt that would give the impression that, look, this is very special. The Fantastic Four standing next to the Avengers, standing next to the X-Men. Okay, he really wanted as many medium shots. Pull the camera back because I said, why? You do such great faces. And I love your faces, I would say to Mike Zeck. And I wished that there had been more close-ups. He goes, I did too. But I had to, the boss is telling me, pull the camera back. And when the Bob Layton issues, the fill-in issues were done by Bob Layton, the same thing. Bob Layton, I really liked his faces, but a lot of medium shots. And then they'd pull the camera back even more to show 12 figures at the time. And it was by design. That's what Shooter wanted. Shooter wanted to showcase the idea that this is what all the action figures together gathered up would look like. But there was a Hunger Game, a Battle Royale, referring to the Japanese, the Battle Royale movie and the manga. This, again, we're going to divide up on Battle World, and we're going to all fight each other, and we're going to turn against each other, and we're going to have new alliances. And I got to tell you, I think that kind of movie, especially based on the success of what's going on right now with the Marvel Rivals, I think that blueprint is very awesome. Sometimes we just want people dropped into different environments, see how they're going to figure it out, see how they're going to best each other. We've got the NBA Finals coming up. Every article that I have read is how can the Indiana Pacers stack up with OKC, who's having a historic season. They've got this incredible defense. They've got this when it's clicking, this incredible offense. So if you follow sports, you know what I'm saying. And it's all about, can this be done? Can this be done? Can this be done? How will they do this? Well, that's what we love. We love to see the underdog. We love to see David versus Goliath. And in Secret Wars, it was different matchups, different characters. Who's going to turn on who? Which alliances? The Battle Royale format, the Hunger Games style format works. We would totally dig it. I hope that they get a generous bite of that apple when they go to make the Secret Wars movie, and it's not completely a reflection of just the second Secret Wars that Jonathan Hickman did. I believe that going further in on the Jim Shooter, Mike Zeck, John Beatty Secret Wars will be a bounty of success for them. It is what we want. We love the face-offs. We love seeing the mix and match of powers. And I mean, really, Civil War tasted it. There was that airport battle out on the tarmac, but we can do so much better than that, especially given Battle World and its different environments. So that's a little bit of my own personal, like, that Battle Royale face-off scenario that took Hunger Games all the way to the top. And look, it's the basis of Gladiator. We love that stuff. Is there no one else? You don't think, how is Maximus going to take out these 8 guys? Well, he does. There is that split up. It's also a very Silver Age concept. Gardner Fox, the Justice League comics, they'd split off. They'd pair up Red Tornado and Superman, Batman, Black Canary, Green Arrow. And later on, Green Arrow, Firestorm. Later on in the 80s, and we love the mixing and the matching and the face-offs. And I just keep repeating myself because it's very exciting. It's exciting to imagine. And I hope we get a generous and extended taste of that. I really do. So here I am with the Secret Wars trade collection, kind of a mini omnibus, if you will. And here's the aforementioned recreation that Alex Ross did of the classic. That they went for that as the cover. On the back you've got the miniseries and the subsequent tie-ins and the what if that they did. Look, whether it's the black costume, and the origin of that doesn't happen without the toys. And so there is some stuff, some art, some fun stories. But again, I'm just going to randomly. I'm just going to randomly without trying. I'm going to pick. Oh, there it is. Okay. There's a panel. They're all together. Okay. And then we get like that's as good as you're going to get in regards to a medium shot of the characters, because Jim Shooter wants them. You know, he wants shots of them all together as often as they can. Now, stuff like this, like look, this is pulled back, so you get all these characters in frame. There's a whole lot of that in here. There's a whole lot of that, and that was specific and by design. And what Jim Shooter is going to look back and say, who's to argue with the success of this book? This book was beloved. It was acclaimed. It was as hot as any comic book could get from 84 through 85. And it really set the stage for what would follow with Crisis. So my question is, once we do this in film, is there any going back? Because this really dictated the terms of engagement in comic books for years and years to come. So we're going to come back in part 2. We're going to discuss so much more of this and the legacy and I think some of the lessons and the examples of what's to come in regards to Secret Wars. And so do not miss part 2 of our indulgence into Secret Wars, Jim Shooter, and a whole lot of layers to unpeel. We got an onion here, okay? We're going to unpeel this bad boy. Hey, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for checking out the show. I just love comics. I love talking comics. I love talking comics with all of you. I hope today you found out that it was a pissing match between two toy companies that created this, and that Wars was the reason it's called Secret Wars is because it sounded like Star Wars, okay? Mattel was going all in. They were banking on it. Thrilled to be diving deeper into this with you guys. And really, again, Jim Shooter, just superstar, incredible talent. The birth of the miniseries, the birth of the blockbuster maxi series, unlocking so many incredible talents. And then on top of all of it, he is an incredible writer. Just an incredible writer with some of my favorite, if not my favorite, Avengers stories ever. When I'm not on this video cast with you guys, I'm all over social media. I'm on the platform known as X, formerly known as Twitter. You know what it is. I'm at Robert Liefeld, RobertLiefeld. That's a long one. Man, that's a long one. I love hanging out with you guys, talking, sharing stories. I read your replies, your comments. I read your DMs. I just love, I'll say it each and every time, the connectivity. The fact that you and I'm on my couch, you're on your couch, you're in Tennessee, I'm in Orange County, you're in Japan, I'm in Orange County, you're in Austria, okay? I'm going to be traveling here, and you know what? I just love the fact that I'll be communicating from there. It'll be reverse. I'll be, somewhere else talking to maybe some people back here in Southern California. It's great. I love it. At Robert Liefeld is my handle over on the platform formerly known as Twitter, now known as X. Instagram, I'm at Rob Liefeld, RoberLiefeld. Both Robert Liefeld, Rob Liefeld have the blue check. It signifies I'm the legitimate article. It's really me. It's me you're looking for. I'm the problem. It's me. So, again, love sharing my visual life with you. It's like my visual diary, my art, the people I'm hanging out with, seeing, the food, the restaurants, the experiences, my family who is so just love them and cherish them so much. Love sharing my life. Love watching yours. Thank you for interacting with me. Again, your comments, your mentions, your replies, your DMs. I'm doing the best I can in trying to keep up with you guys. You guys just keep the comments have just increased, and I'm trying to keep up with all the YouTube stuff and the Spotify stuff, and it's a blast. There are no complaints. One thing I should tell you guys. You guys, I want my family to know this all the time, and I think they do, but I feel like if I verbalize it, then it's like it's confirmed. And you guys don't understand. My life exceeded my dreams when I was a kid, when I broke into comic books. Despite all the trials and the family stuff, the sickness, my dad, my life has been spectacular, is spectacular. It exceeded my dreams. I am living my dreams. I have a wife that I am madly in love with. We've been together just shy of 30 years. It's coming up in about a month. I have three amazing kids who I learned so much from, and they've taught me so much about life and love. And I get to make comic books and share comic book stories and talk about comics. I've met incredible people, incredible talents. So if I were to drop over at the end of today's show and everything were to end, it was the best. I am ridiculously just on cloud nine pretty much every day. And I know that there are people who want to portray me in a different life. That's just not who I am. I am everything is fun, but I've got to be able to call things out and talk about how I see things. And if you see them differently, great. Let's agree to disagree. Just so happy to interact with so many of you. It really just makes me smile. It really tickles me. On Facebook, Rob Liefeld, Marvel Extreme and Beyond is the name of our group. Myself, a gentleman named Terry Sala, Sala, is my co-administrator. We run the group, and he or I will click you in depending on the time of day. And when you check in, and we have great art contests, we have incredible talent, we have great topics, and each episode of the Rob Liefeld Show and Rob Observations gets a dedicated post so you can weigh in, talk, discuss, and we have just a great time. All positive energy. We don't let pissy little flame wars and troll fights break out. We just don't have any of that. It's purposely upbeat, fun, and I am so glad to have known and met so many of you through Rob Liefeld, Marvel Extreme and Beyond. That's our group on Facebook. Check it out. If you've got the Whatnot app, you should check it out. I will be taking a bit of a sabbatical, but when I'm back later in the summer, you can catch me there. I'm Rob Liefeld. If you follow me, you'll be alerted when I go live. We have exclusive comics, variants. And when I say comics, I mean entire comic books. Youngblood right now, Youngblood 2025, 1 and 2 is going up, and Giant Size Youngblood is going up. By the end of the summer, there'll be 3 Youngblood comics that are direct to consumer. We have The Last Blood, my so far, give or take about 100 pages worth of this adventure that takes place in the future with Bloodstrike Brigade, Prophet, all manner of different characters. We're having such a blast, and it's work that it's literally labors of love. I love sharing them and making them, but the way that you get them from me is through my live streams, like the one that I have on Whatnot. But I do custom signatures. I'm gonna keep. I've got some new signatures I'm breaking out, some new designs. It's really fun. You'll find out what a Liefeld chisel is, a drop shadow chisel, and a blood splatter chisel. I know your head's spinning, but you got to see it to believe it. Check it out. Follow me on Whatnot, Rob Liefeld. You'll be alerted when I go live, and I hope to see you there. You know what I'm doing? I am going to read your comments that you have left for me. I know we've got some new comments on the Apple podcast that I saw today. Let me jump over there and share some of those. Really, really fun, and you guys are always so kind, so generous, and I when you leave them, I have told you I will share them here on our show, and here I am sharing them on our show. These latest 2 were just left. It's called My Return to Comics. This is American Pickles. 5 stars he gives our show. He says, I just wrapped up the Marvel Heroes Reborn Jim Lee's Fantastic Four episode on Rob Observations with Rob Liefeld, and man, this is a solid listen. I am 46, a 90s kid who lived and breathed comic books back in the 90s. Those were my glory days, spending every spare buck I earned at the comic shop. But life got busy, and I walked away from comics for 25 years. Then Rob Liefeld's passion for comic books sucked me back in like a tractor beam. I'm back to reading comics after a long shift. Rob's real talk about art and stories feels like shooting the breeze with a buddy who knows his trade. Thank you, Rob, for getting this old guy back into the game. Keep up the good stuff. Wow. Thank you, American Pickles. And thank you for that very generous write-up. And I just appreciate the fact that you get out, you write these comments, and you send them. That takes time. I appreciate you. Thank you so very much. This is from an account called DKPWV. He keeps it brief. It's called The Best, 5 stars, my favorite comic book related podcast. I appreciate Rob's unfiltered candor on and observations of the comic book industry. I have been a comic book fan since the 60s. I am 59. Keep up the great work, Rob. Buddy, DKPWV, thank you for sharing those. You know, let's get to some YouTube comments, because you guys are so great. Let me get to some YouTube comments. There's been some really fun ones. Boy, and I read all of them, and I try and at least like or respond. So please give me some time. Uh, Going through this says Auto81 says absolutely right. People will pretend to love everything Marvel puts out, not realizing they are helping to cause the decrease in quality. We should expect better because we know what Marvel can be capable of. Hey, Otto, here's the deal. I just want great stuff. I want Superman to blow me away. I want Fantastic Four to inspire me. Why wouldn't I? I want those experiences. But to keep acting like some of this stuff, which is misguided and not terribly impressive, and has, I read somebody's review. They put new reviews of Captain America: Red Hulk up the other day, and they're just like, look, the action in this movie is nowhere on par with what we came to expect, like at the peak of Winter Soldier. It's like Disney Plus action, and I heard that a bunch. And it's like we deserve the right to want better. This is Mitchell VFTJ 509. He says, "This is my favorite podcast. Thank you for telling the truth. For the most part, Marvel movies haven't been very good since Endgame. There are a few exceptions." Let me keep keep popping through here, and let's see. Some people are invoking the way the Italians called me, Liefeld. I'm trying to get stuff that is more specific. Oh man, this is perfect. Camilo Cuba 6927 says, with the creators of the Silver and Bronze Age getting older, I've started making it my mission to visit at least one when I go to a convention with my kids. We met Jim Shooter this past weekend. He signed several Secret Wars omnibuses and gave my kids a couple of trading cards that he signed. My 8-year-old loves Sonic and got to meet some of the art team that does the Sonic comic. He says, my kids couldn't stop talking about it after we left. Here's one from Nathan Campos. Says, Arthur Adams is easily one of my favorite and secret inspirations growing up as a kid because of his work at Marvel. And the Chef Boyardee cans, he sure did do. I have those. I have them still. The Chef Boyardee cans that he did the art for. This is just keep powering through here, and let's see if we can get to one more. I'm just looking for something that's maybe a little longer to read because you guys. Here a guy says, I owned the corporate law group. Says I owned some Art Adams Johnny Future art, which I regrettably sold. I also love Michael Kaluta. Sometimes I feel like I'm the only Michael Kaluta fan. Batman 253 is also a great cover. So there's and I always just enjoy when you guys inform about maybe comic books that you picked up as a result of your enthusiasm for this show, because that is something that has been happening since day one, and I do take it for granted, the stuff that is known. I've always thought that there's so much more that people know, and I feel like, well, I'm not going to tell them that because they already know that, and then I tell it, and everyone goes, I didn't know that. Like a guy said, I never heard of the Marvel Zombie. I didn't understand why Marvel Zombies, the term, existed until you pointed out in a recent show. So thank you. So this is Just Comics, and he wrote very, very, very generously. Just Comics has shared. Let me get this queued up. See, guys, there's just a raw. Just Comics said, I remember in Chicago, it was the early 2000s, I caught you by yourself at your table. He's speaking of me. I told you about my buddy who was a huge fan, and you did a cable sketch for him for free. He still has it, by the way. I asked if you wouldn't mind doing a sketch for me the next day, and you were so gracious and nice. You were going to do it, but the line started to form, and you asked if I could come back later. I did, but still a line, and you asked, could you come back on Sunday? And I did, but still a line, so you asked me to come behind the table. And I sat next to you, and we talked about movies and comics. The SWAT movie was out, and I remembered we had that conversation. You drew me a Deadpool, and I still have it. I cannot thank you enough for the memory and the sketch. Just one of the nicest guys in comics. Now, Just Comics, thank you. Boy, I'm glad that ended well. I'm like, where's this going? But hey, it landed. And look, I've been you guys at the recent store signing. Somebody goes, why do you stand again all the time? Because we signed for 5 hours from 11:30 to 4:30. I signed and I was out at 5 and we caught our plane and we flew home. Because you guys are signing so long. And when people get up to line, they want their time to make their choice. What are they going to purchase? Which books are they going to get signed? And so we never want to rush anybody, and we don't. But that can cause a backlog, and you're standing longer. So what I want is I want you to see that I am standing with you, in solidarity with you. I'm not in my recliner just talking to the store owner or somebody else and shooting the shit and just ignoring you guys and maybe then just kind of working you in. I am there to not only shine for you, but I want to reflect what you're going through. It just means so much to me. And when you guys write long dissertations like this, I want to share them. And I also want to tell you how thankful I remember you. I remember that story. I remember that show. And I remember those lines, and it was great. And hey, thank you. Thank you all for writing any comments on Spotify, on Apple, on YouTube. I'm going to continue to read them and share them here on the show. Thank you. As always, you guys, I hope you're doing well. I hope your mental, spiritual, physical, and emotional self are exactly where they need to be. Every day there's a new obstacle, a new trial, a new for me, I got 3 kids, my marriage. There's always something going on somewhere, somehow. There's other family stuff because we got aunts and uncles and grandparents, and then I got to work and planning, and I'm got a million things I'm juggling. But there is never a time that I take it for granted, and I'm not thankful. And like I said, I just have, I try and, if I need to go off and take a 5-minute power nap, I do it. I desperately need to go out, have a bite to eat with my family, grab some time with my kid, run some errands. Those are my escapes. Because when you're holed up like I am all day drawing, sometimes just getting out and having a drive is a release, and it resets. And I just hope that in your situation, with your hamster wheel, with your grinder, with your treadmill, whatever it is, because we're all on it. We've all got goals, hopes, dreams, and they take time. They take pieces of us, right? They do. My hope for you is that you spend time with friends, see a great movie, see a great show, read a great comic book, and just get renewed. Get that extra energy so that you can get back at it, okay? And that you can get where you need to go. We are pulling for you. Once again, I failed to bring you the big cup. Good God Almighty. The big cup is where it's at. That is my 90 seconds of pure heaven each and every day. If I really believe that over the last decade, it's my power pill. Okay. I hope you have your power pill, but maybe it's as long as it's not something that's terribly dangerous. But obviously, I've been told how dangerous the Reese's are. So maybe I'm the pot calling the kettle black here. Hey, take care of yourself. Stay out of trouble. Do not leave me. You know where I'll be. Right there. Woo-hoo. Okay, come by. Swing, open that door. Let me in. Let's go. Let's get there together. We most certainly, we definitely, and we abso-freaking-lutely are going to talk again real soon.